Politics and religion. Politics and religion. Interested in thinking on the subject? If you are, welcome, vanakkam, swagatham. While others are obsessed with, at least focused on, highlighting and hammering out the differences between religions, proving that one religion is the exact opposite of the other, or at least that the goals germane to a religion are incompatible with the goals espoused by all other religions, which is how religions make out a separate case for themselves, each one of them. While others are focused on this, I prefer to take the exact opposite route. The more I study religions, and the more I study religion as a universal phenomenon, the more I am convinced that all religions are fundamentally the same. And in this particular video, I'm going to deal with only one aspect of it, namely the very striking parallel between between Hinduism and Christianity. Between Hinduism and Christianity. And within that, we'll focus just on one aspect. All of us know the significance of the Crusades in the history of Christianity. Crusades were launched to protect Christianity from the aggressive advance of Islam, and by inference also to protect the Christian God from the excesses of the Islamic God. We know how this has panned out in history, and how today almost every Christian with any degree of common sense, any Christian who understands the basics of life and history, is deeply embarrassed about the Crusades. There was a time when Crusades constituted the pride of European Christianity, about which today all Europeans, all Indians, and Christians anywhere in the world are completely embarrassed. To me, the historical parallel, the historical counterpart of the Christian Crusades launched against the Muslims, the Hindu counterpart of Christian Crusades is the Ram Janmabhoomi movement. I don't know if you have heard anyone else say this. If you have, it's well and good. Then we have a fair bit of common grounds. We can think more easily. The Ram Janmabhoomi movement was launched to liberate the birthplace of Lord Ram from the unjust, indefensible occupation of the Muslims, going back several centuries, at a spot where presumably a Ram temple stood, which was destroyed by physical force, and a masjid, Babri Masjid, erected in its place. It is not my intention here to dispute the historical veracity of this account. The matter is well settled by the Supreme Court of India, and I have nothing whatsoever to say at variance with what the Supreme Court of this country has said. My intention here is to reflect, as, if you don't mind, as a philosopher of religion, as well as somebody who has to a certain extent minded the historical marches of various religions, how religions have evolved, what all ideas, agendas, priorities were entertained at various stages of the history of these religions, how passionately they were pursued, and how over a period of time all these grand and mighty religious agendas fizzled out into virtually nothing. If you can point out a single instance contrary to the pattern I am developing here, I'll be eternally beholden to you, because I don't want to entertain false theories and false understandings. Now, when the Ram Janmabhoomi movement was launched, it created, incrementally of course, it created the sort of excitement comparable, or the excitement comparable to the idea of the Crusades generated when the Pope of the time called for a crusade in order to protect the holy sites very dear to Christianity. And of course, people from all over all over Europe responded. Thousands and thousands of lives were sacrificed, all in great piety, all in great religious fervor. Much blood was shed in the name of one who said, "Put down the sword, he who takes the sword shall fall by it." The one thing you must notice is, when such man inspired agendas, presumably for the sake of God or for the protection of God and the assets of God, are launched, the very first thing that happens is that such agendas, such advocacies, immediately flout, violate, corrupt, and degrade all values and ideals that the particular God or God representative gave to the people. So, the irony that's inevitable in such movements is that these man-inspired agendas, which are sold to the people as though they are divinely inspired, as though God's pleasure and God's blessing would entirely depend on how passionately people participate in it. These very agendas become the greatest embarrassments for whatever has been revealed of the nature of God within that tradition. So, the very first thing that happens as a consequence of any religiously inspired agenda of aggression, whatever achievements are sought to be made with the help of sword and bloodshed, becomes a frontal violation and an abiding embarrassment to the particular God and the nature of God as intuited in that religion itself. So, whether it is a crusade in the history of Christianity, or whether it is a Ram Janmabhoomi movement in the history of Hinduism, as time will prove, the net result is that the glorious nature of the God in question is slighted, stymied, defiled in the process of pursuing this agenda. But here I have to admit that the people who participate in it with utmost sincerity and religious fervor. Unfortunately, they lack the historical foresight and the far-sightedness, as well as a historical sense, to realize that the agenda on which they are embarked will have an outcome completely contrary to what they expect at that point in time. In other words, they are headed to assured self-contradiction, assured embarrassment, assured defeat in terms of the proposed goals. The more they succeed, the more they fail. The more victorious they are, the more defeated they become. This is the inevitable and irreducible irony of history. And the latest illustration in this series, I began with Christianity, the Crusades in the history of Christianity. The latest instance in the religious history of humankind, I believe, is the Ayodhya movement, Ram Janmabhoomi movement. I don't believe that the shining example of righteousness that Lord Ram is, or as Hindus believe, I don't claim to be an expert on Hinduism, needed any political scaffolding or political boost or political protection and patronage in order to preserve its importance, its spiritual importance and influence in the life of Hindus as believers. There are many, many Ram Bhakts, there's no question about it, and millions of people draw their inspiration from Lord Ram, and they have every right to do so. And as a Christian, I respect it without any reservation. But if anyone believes that through the Ram Janmabhoomi movement, Lord Ram's status as an embodiment of righteousness will get a meaningful boost, they were bound to be proved wrong. And that's what the sense of history proves me. And this is not the first time that I am saying it. I have written about it on previous occasions. So the same thing happened in this instance as well. So the question that the Ram Janmabhoomi movement raises, particularly through the defeat of the BJP candidate from the Faizabad constituency — by the way, Ayodhya is not a Lok Sabha constituency, Ayodhya is only an assembly constituency — the rout of the BJP candidate in the Faizabad constituency clearly proves that the Hindus have become enlightened enough to realize that all this political maneuvering is completely counterproductive. It has nothing to do with the righteousness of Lord Ram. And this is an issue, therefore, that deserves great attention. And in the following days, I will be undertaking many reflections on this line, particularly what is the relationship between the spiritual integrity of people's idea of their God and the political patronage and its impact on the idea of the same God, and how it plays out in the life of the people, and what inferences and lessons that people practicing other religions may draw from instances of such serious significance and magnitude or national visibility can afford each one of us. So Ayodhya is important not only for Hindus, it's also important for Christians, for Muslims, for Sikhs, indeed for anyone who professes or practices any religion whatsoever. That's the only reason why we need to accord some attention to it, and I promise to do so in the days ahead. Thank you and have a blessed day.